I'm Sylvia Paris-Drummond. I'm from Mulgrave, Guysborough County, and I'm the CEO at the Delmore Buddy Daye Learning Institute. Sankofa itself shows up very clearly and strongly in representation. The Delmore Buddy Daye Learning Institute, DBDLI, is a pride space for me in that it was formed from community activism, advocacy, and embodies community voices. So the namesake, Mr. Delmore Buddy Daye, was pivotal in ensuring that this institute came about in the framing so that it is situated in community. It connects back to his leadership in the Black Learners Advisory Committee report recommendations, and that it continues to evolve and respond to community concerns and community needs.
My name is Melinda Daye. I come from the community of Creighton Street, Maynard Street. The part of the book, Buddy Daye, Champion of Two Worlds, A Daughter's Recollection by myself, Melinda Daye. One part that I believe really sticks out with me is the work that went into the Black Learners Advisory Committee. Because if it wasn't for that work, and if it wasn't for that man down at the House of Assembly and the influence, the respect that he had when they came to him and said, "Buddy, something has to be done. What should we do?" He said, "If you leave it with me, I can gather the people, the right people around that table, and we can help make a difference in terms of what happens in this province for education of the Black learner." It's that Black report. It's our historical Bible, so to speak.
My name is Malik Adams. I'm a school counselor. My community is North End Halifax with connections to Truro, North Preston, Barbados. Africentric education beyond curriculum and textbook means, well, first of all, I always break the word down, African-centered. But that's the fundamental principle for me, that it's African-centered. Beyond curriculum, beyond textbook, it is what our worldviews are. What are our lenses? What is the language? What are the languages that we use? What is the energy attached to how we move? What is our purpose? How do we serve community? All of those things to me are always a part of Afrocentric education, even more important than the textbook and the curriculum.
Visual is important for us in terms of being storytellers. We understand the value of symbols. We draw on the Ngusa Saba symbols, and we also draw on the Ndikra symbols. In our way of being, they have meaning, they have depth, and they come from an understanding. So it's important that people understand that value. It's important that we see symbols throughout our spaces, and some of that is the symbolic, like the Sankofa bird itself, for example.
My name is Dean Smith. I'm legal counsel with Federal Department of Justice, and I was born and raised in Whitley Pier, Cape Breton. And I know it is a word originating from Ghana, the Ndinkra tribe, and I believe that it stands for, it's not taboo to go back and fetch what you have forgotten or what you have left behind. So I think it's a valuable lesson, in particular for Black communities here in Nova Scotia.
Within this idea of Sankofa, and how it shows up about how we feel and how it can be in practical things, it does lead back to that we have to know our history, heritage, and our culture, because then we can apply it.
Our past is very relevant and influential in terms of who we are as we move forward, not just as individuals, but as a people.
So the role that Afro-Nova Scotia educators play for our students is, I see it as a comprehensive one.
I think in Nova Scotia it's very important because in my profession, in the legal profession, there were very few Black lawyers in Nova Scotia throughout its history.
When I say comprehensive, it has to be comprehensive because we don't dominate that demographic. The demographic of African Nova Scotians teaching. We'll just talk about public school, for example. We're no more than 1% of the population. That means of the 10,000 plus public school teachers we have in Nova Scotia, over 100 are African Nova Scotian.
There were very few Black lawyers in Nova Scotia throughout its history. We know that as a result of the Royal Commission on the Donald Marshall prosecution, that a spotlight was shined on that issue. And as a result, and through the advocacy of Burnley, Rocky Jones, and others, the Indigenous Black and Mi'kmaq program was created. Now that program has graduated nearly 300 lawyers of Black and Indigenous descent, and they are therefore representing their communities, not only in Nova Scotia, but across the country.
The comprehensive part really means going back to what we've always done. Who are the educators in the community? It always starts with the home. It always starts with family, however you look at family. Family is whoever is connected to and whoever you move with. So that certainly can include parents, but it includes elders, it includes grandparents, uncles and aunts. It includes other people in the community. And especially if, ironically, when you talk about formal education, it's most likely that most of the people that we connect to in our community, depending on how old they are, wouldn't have had the opportunity to have that formal education. Yet they're still educators. They still teach us about who we are. They still have the opportunity to teach us about our identity, who we are as Black people, who we are as African Nova Scotians, who we are as Africans who came here before Confederation.
For African Nova Scotian learners, when we talk about the value of Sankofa and we talk about the value of their experiences, we have to support them by ensuring that they have the knowledge of their history, heritage, and culture.
I'm 9th generation African Nova Scotian. I mean, we came here as part of the Black Loyalists. That's not just a title, like that means something. There's a whole history that goes there in terms of, our vision and how we make a life for each other, how we're able to move from, in this case, the United States to Canada, how we, like most Black people, make a way out of no way, right? Come to be promised something, you get here, you don't get it. And so you have to create community. You have to find ways to work. You have to find ways to raise your family. You have to find ways to educate your people. And because especially then, certainly now as well, but especially then where communities were segregated, we're all we had. And we're often all we have. So when I think of educators, the educators just aren't the people in the classroom teaching the formal curriculum. The educators and the support come from family, comes from others in community, comes from professionals, comes from tradespeople, comes from activists, comes from volunteers, comes from young people, comes from elders, comes from OGs. Like it comes from all of those places, right? So that's what I mean by comprehensive. Fundamentally, you have to believe, if you're the instructor, that students can excel just like any other human beings in the world. And then you have to allow a space where they actually see the world from their own lenses, and it's not seen as bad, it's not seen as negative, it's not seen as foreign, it's not seen as less than. We have to operate from those two perspectives right from the beginning.
I think it's very important because education is liberation. Knowledge is power, and I don't think you can mistake those two. With a law degree, it's easy for me now. In retrospect, it wasn't, but it's easy for me now to advocate on behalf of communities and to identify their issues. Being from the Black community, I understand those issues. And that relationship between myself and my community is very important and very sincere.
My name is George Gray. I'm chairperson of the African United Baptist Association Historical Committee. I'm also deacon elect in my church, which is New Horizons Baptist Church in Halifax, and I presently live in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. That's my community at this time. For viewers that are not familiar with the African United Baptist Association of Nova Scotia, it's been in existence since 1853, 1854. It's a collection of African Nova Scotian churches that has come together over the years. It started, I would say, by a vision. Our Black churches were scattered around the province of Nova Scotia. And because the vision of the day, someone had a vision that they decided to travel around Nova Scotia, connecting all the churches together. And I believe that person was Reverend Richard Preston. As I was holding the Sankofa bird looks back into the past. But then it doesn't stay there for a long time. You got to look to the future. Because if you stay in the past, you don't get anything done. You really don't. You have to learn from the mistakes of the past, and then you can move ahead.
The changes that I've witnessed for African Nova Scotian students over the years, I would say one of the main differences is there is more programming. The programming, in my personal opinion, is not nearly at the level it should be, but it's certainly programming that we didn't have in my day coming up. So the idea that you have African-centered cohorts of students doing programs, that's a change that I've seen over the last 30 plus years.
It's very important for communities to learn about history, and in particular difficult history, such as the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children, because there are lessons there. What's often misunderstood is when the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children opened its doors in 1921, it opened its doors to great fanfare. It was a miracle that an institution was created that would be able to house young Black boys and girls, children, and care for them. So it was a big celebration. More than 1,500 people from across Black communities in Nova Scotia came out to celebrate its opening. The mission and mandate were pure and were true. Care for young Black children that were not permitted in other homes or congregate care facilities across the province. So that was the mission and that was the mandate. That is the great thing about the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children. But there's no mistaking there was a dark side as well. There was a dark past. We've heard from former residents that the history of the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children isn't bright and shiny for them. There were some serious allegations of abuse, and those allegations needed to be aired and needed to be heard. And many former residents have grown a great deal by sharing those experiences with Nova Scotians. So why is it important to hear those stories? As Sankofa teaches us, those stories are important because it shows the path forward. It shows what not to repeat and what to focus on. And the home should have focused on its mandate and its purpose. And when it failed to do that, that's where things became very difficult and the history became somewhat dark. The important part is to learn from those lessons and to never repeat it going forward.
Dr. Sylvia Hamilton's Little Black Schoolhouse, that documentary and all the things that she covers in terms of preserving memory. It's interesting how we define memory, because a lot of times when we think of memory, I think a lot of people define it as a story. This is something that happened at this time, at this place, in the past. It's significant, but it happened back then. But the idea of memory is that you have what happened back there so that you can use it today and going forward. So the whole purpose of memory isn't to have a story. The whole purpose of memory is that's your narrative, but you use that narrative to exist and you use that narrative to go forward. Because the more that we activate our memory and the things that we do well, and also the things that we didn't do well, like it's all part of the human experience, you have to have that to move forward. When people don't have a memory, I think it was Malcolm X that said, you're demoted to the lower animals.
Education is vital in our communities because if we don't get educated, we are going to fail. I would say our churches have filled many, many gaps. Years ago, our parents, they were called blue-collar workers. And when they worked out in service, they were just so-and-so. But in our churches, the ladies, they might have been the presidents of groups. The men might have been the presidents of groups. They were somebody special. And because they were somebody special, the youth looked up to them.
So young African Nova Scotians watching this, as you're shooting for the stars, your culture and your identity is coming with you. The days are over where we're putting that to the side and saying, well, to be a successful person of African ancestry, I have to adopt foreign cultures and identity. Dr. Molefi Asante coined the phrase Afrocentricity. And one of the quotes he has is, what could be any more correct than for people to see the world through their own eyes? Unlike some of previous generations who were told to be successful, you gotta get rid of that, you gotta leave that behind, you gotta bring your whole identity and culture forward.
I hope that future generations, when they look back and remember the content and the flow of this conference that is happening over these 2 days, they will also have kind of a Sankofa feeling where they will take from that into the contemporary time of where they are thinking the point that we have much more in common than we have separating us, and that we can lead the way for ourselves, and that we continue to be grounded in relationships and collective way of being, so that there is not a focus on what separates us. There is a focus on what unites us.